What's up, everybody? In this week's episode, we're going to talk about a new technology that could be building the next Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, a horrible billion-dollar investment, and we're going to talk about the greatest fear of retirees. Take a listen. Hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Money Huddle, a podcast that discusses financial topics for families, retirees, and small business owners. Hosted by Michael Baker and Ross Marinell. All opinions expressed by Michael and Ross or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and may not reflect the opinions of Advisory Alpha. The podcast recording is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Advisory Alpha may maintain positions in securities discussed on the program.
Welcome back. It's another episode of the Money Huddle here with Ross Marinell. Ross, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Michael. Good to be with you today. We've got some fun topics for this podcast. Should we get rolling?
I'm excited, man. Let's dive in. I think you got something about Mr. Fitzmagic, pro football player.
So we love to talk football here, and we're in the throes, middle part of the season. Glad to see that COVID hasn't ruined the NFL season yet. We've had some warning signs, but so far we're rolling. But man, so our one of our favorite quarterbacks, Ryan Fitzpatrick. This guy's a journeyman. He's been everywhere. He's been in the league a long time. He's finally got the Miami Dolphins.
How many years?
He started back in 2005. He started with the Rams.
Wow.
These poor Dolphins, man. He suffered through some really bad teams. He's finally got the Dolphins at like 3-3, and he gets benched for Tua. How do we feel about that? Fitzmagic is over?
I feel perfectly fine about that. We were talking about this before the show.
This is cruel, man.
Listen,
let Fitzmagic play.
This guy has the greatest job, I think, in pro sports. He is the backup quarterback to the franchise quarterback. He gets paid to be ready, but he don't have to get out there, take the hits. And if you are a good backup quarterback, you can have quite a career just being in the league, making a ton of money. And we were talking about this, and I said, okay, how much money is he making and what per year? And you said, how much was he making per year?
Oh, so it looked like he was on looks like he's got total compensation for 2020 of $8 million.
$8 million.
Wow.
Okay. And then I said, all right, now what's his career earnings?
So SpotTrack has it at $71 million.
So do I feel bad for him?
All right. Well, it's Tua time in Miami. Fitzmagic era is over.
If you're a former athlete, you want to be out there. You want to play. No question about it. But, probably the most brutal sport that I can think of in the world is professional football. And so if this guy can get out and move his limbs and have his brain intact, and he's been able to make over $70 million, I say, God bless.
All right. So Tua time, it's coming. That's our Money Huddle. That's our football section today. So where should we start off, Michael?
Well, you're telling me something about this interesting game that your daughters play, and where kids are just making tons and tons of money, and I don't want to mess up the name, so I'm not going to say it. I'm going to let you tell me what it was.
So this was announced in the last few weeks that the video game Roblox, 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 is filing to go public. And so they're looking for a IPO date sometime early next year. What I found interesting about this Roblox in this game was, so here's a little snippet. There was a really good article wrote. It's called The Building Blocks. Let's see here. The Building Blocks of Tech. And there's a little snippet in here. It said, in the 1950s, kids grew up playing with Legos. This was a fit for a world centered around manufacturing and industrial work. In the 1970s, kids grew up tinkering with personal computers like the Commodore 64. This laid the foundation of a generation of entrepreneurs like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. It says, today's kids growing up building in Roblox, mirroring the rise of what we call a low code or no code. I mean, it's not technically challenging to go in there and create on top of this framework. in the startup ecosystem and signaling how everyone is now able to manipulate and create software. So the 12-year-old who spends her free time building games in Roblox will become the 22-year-old who builds her company's business apps in Airtable. So this is a little video game. A lot of kids in that 8 to 12-year-old range play it. Okay. And check this out. This is the income potential for people that contribute to it and build on top of this system. So Roblox is kind of like a game creation platform. So you can take what they have there, this sort of generic setup of Legos, basically, and build on top of it. So this gentleman, Alex Balfons, 21-year-old senior at Duke, he's paying for his degree with earnings from a single Roblox game that he made 3 years ago. The game is called Jailbreak. It's one of the most popular on Roblox, and he has made nearly $10 million creating a game inside of this platform. Is that wild?
That's pretty crazy. But, you know, the technology and the esports, all of that stuff is becoming pretty big with that, you know, with the youngest generation, I think.
So the big picture is just kind of how tech is changing the way we work and earn income, but also form entertainment. And so for my 11-year-old daughter who loves this game, she's starting to create. So she's starting to create outfits, and then she starts to create her little obstacles and games. And so you can see the wheels turning, right? Just like a young kid playing with Legos starts building something small to, you know, something elaborate. And we're starting to see this happen on some of these platforms. The difference is when I was playing with Legos 40 years ago, Michael, I couldn't make $10 million.
Yeah, there was no one going to pay to watch you play Legos.
Right. My parents were recording me playing with Legos and then putting them on YouTube. The way some of these savvy, you know, creators can make income, and what it means by low code or no code means it doesn't really take a coding degree. If you're just familiar with how the game works, you can get in there and create. My 11-year-old daughter is doing it. And so it creates opportunities for people who don't necessarily have a technology background to go in there and potentially make several $1 million.
The real thing will be, what do they do with all this money, especially if it's a young, you know, if it's a younger creator or a kid or, you know, an underage, you know, child that's the star or the subject that's making the money. What do they do with it?
I don't know. It sounds like this young man, Alex, is paying for his degree at Duke. But kudos for him for continuing to get his degree, having, you know, earned $10 million at the age of 21 already. Wow. But it kind of went hand in hand with something else that caught my attention this week, which was for the first time we're starting to see some college enrollment numbers. And so it said this year, first-time student enrollment at the college level is down 16%. Combination of course, probably financial stress due to economic lockdowns, lost income opportunities for the parents of those children, COVID fear. Maybe it's just the desire to be in live classes versus virtual classes. But we're starting to see, you know, enrollment drop for first-time students. But all these other avenues are opening up for them to make money in some cases. So this is going to be a conundrum going forward as to how much do we value that you know, undergrad degree versus finding opportunities to make money in other ways. What if they dry up?
No, I agree. I mean, I think, you know, we may have talked about this in a different show, but the idea of something like COVID bringing in a massive disruption across so many different places, right? Across education, the workforce. We've talked about how we think the workplace environment is going to be different even after things seem to get back to normal from the virus. And colleges are no exception to that. I mean, one of the biggest talking points that has arisen over the last several years has been the cost of going to college, how expensive it is. And we've had the conversation, I know, in amongst ourselves, like, who is going to be like the Netflix university? Who's going to be the first university to come out and start compiling like lectures and courses where it's like on demand? charge a premium, but far less than going to brick and mortar university and providing top level education. And I think you may see some of that emerge, and especially with the virtual learning environment where a lot of these schools went virtual in the spring, people paid attention. They're like, wait a minute, like you went virtual, it's virtual now, or it's part-time, but the tuition didn't change. And I think that there's going to be a conversation to be had. So the numbers aren't shocking. What will be interesting to see is if it persists, year over year.
Well, it's going to have some lingering effects because the less revenue, it's going to it could potentially snowball into some other issues as far as what these universities and colleges can spend money on and how they develop and grow their campus life, their course material, to compensating staff and administrators. So it could be something that continues to be challenging long term. So we'll see. So, I'm going to use this Roblox IPO as a way to get my 11-year-old daughter interested in the stock market, because I've already talked to her about what it means to be an equity owner in a business and starting to get her acclimated. So I think this will be the first stock that she'll want to buy. And so I'm going to use it as a little learning tool. We'll see how it goes. And hopefully one day she can make $10 million in there creating games.
And are you gonna let her retire, or let you retire if she makes $10 million? Or are you just gonna say, are you gonna?
Hey, listen, if she makes $10 million at the age of 21, I don't know how much influence I'll be able to have over telling her what to do with that money. But you never know.
Never know.
We'll see. So what else do you got for us today?
Well, we were talking. One of our favorite authors is a guy named James Clear, and he puts out a little newsletter that I think is always just full of great little insights and wisdom. And he put out one this week that
wait a second, are we about to have a clear off?
We're going to have a clear off.
All right, let's do it. James Clear.
All right,
clear
man.
off.
I'm going to go first because you got a James Clear quote as well, right?
I do.
I think our quotes might be cousins. But his idea in this one, it says be radically proactive about any behavior that pays off in 10 years. And I think about that for two different groups of people that, we try to, bring into the audience of our show. Number one is the people that are planning for retirement and know that retirement is less than a decade out for them one way or another, either because they're planning to leave or just they believe that age wise, they don't have more than 10 years left in the workforce, and to be radically proactive about planning that out and giving yourself a nice runway leading up to retirement. Because we've talked about before, there's all kinds of things that can happen. This year's a perfect example. COVID. There are people that have gotten COVID this year and that have survived. There are people that unfortunately have gotten COVID this year, and it's resulted in a loss of life. And this is something that no one knew existed a year ago. October of 2019 right. is like maybe the first case overseas. Like we weren't thinking about this at all. So folks that have a plan that is flexible and can adapt, to me, the earlier you can get going on that, the better. And then for my younger families, a lot of younger families have small kids, and it's easy to put off saving for college or putting money back for college or starting or delaying your own savings and investment program. And, the earlier you get going on that, and to use his words, radically proactive, right? Because we tend to run our lives day to day, tend to be more routine, and we get caught up in those routines. So once you get something formed and you can build it into a habit, the better off you're doing that earlier than later.
Very good.
All right. That's my clear off. I mean, that's my section. What you got?
Here we go. So this is kind of related. So this post was called Solve Big Problems Early. So I like that. Solve big problems early. Rebound after one missed workout, not a decade of inactivity. Repair a strained relationship the next day, not years later. And here we go in kind of some of the retirement planning. Fix overspending before it becomes a lifestyle. So solving big problems early. A lot of times we'll have people come and say, oh, man, I missed my IRA contribution last year. Okay, that's fine. But let's get right back on it this year. because we don't want to wait a decade. And we don't want to look back and say, man, we should have been saving 10 years ago. So you got to get right back on it and get in the game. So, all right, we had a clear off. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you on that, and that is normal, where we will just let time pass on certain things, and before you know it, a day becomes a week becomes a month, and so on. So, but James Clear, he's the author of a book that I highly recommend called Atomic Habits. It's one of those must reads in my view. And it's got a permanent place on my bookshelf, and I pick it up and I browse through it from time to time and read different passages. It's one of those, what I would say, just kind of a life manual, something that's just full of wisdom, full of insights, and I highly recommend it. I had another thing I want to talk about today, with probably take up the meat of our conversation, but it's that time of year. Well, it's not that time of year in that I have a designated continuing education time, but with the coronavirus pandemic, I've been really doing a lot of my continuing ed hours and studying, and I'm doing some graduate work. And I sat through a session the other day that I think would just continue to reiterate how important it is to be thinking about the fundamentals, especially if you are getting close to retirement or planning for retirement. And for those of you who are not yet retirement age or thinking anything about retirement, this will be good for you to listen up as well. And it's the idea of how important income is when you retire. And this was a presentation I sat through with David Blanchett. And he is highly credentialed expert in our industry. He's the head of retirement research with Morningstar Investment Management. And David, the title of his presentation was Guaranteed Income, the Forgotten Household Asset. And he, went through, it was about an hour-long presentation, so of course we won't have the time to go through the details. But a couple of things that jumped out at me, and one is he reminded me of this study that Allianz had done about what retirees' fears are. And in this study, in this survey, 61% of the people responding said that they feared outliving their money more than they actually feared dying in their retirement years. 61% outliving my money was the biggest fear, 39% death. What are your thoughts on that?
It's pretty common when we're talking to people that are crafting that retirement income plan at the beginning stages, right in their 60s, early 70s. There is a lot of concern over becoming a burden on your children, that you have to reduce your spending or even just get to the point where maybe you can't live independently. And I think that's a really strong feeling. People do not want to become a burden on their adult children. They want to be able to live with some financial independence and dignity throughout their life. And I tend to agree with that it's, depending on their thoughts on death, that we don't want to lose our stature and our financial independence, because the alternative is just it's too difficult to digest, right? Having to go back to family to get assistance to live is not something that anybody I think wants to do. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. And I think that's why those stories about income and it can be so compelling, is because it does create some level of assurance that you may have a floor of income. We talk a lot about in our retirement planning philosophy about, what is and how do we establish the floor of income, meaning sources that we believe to be there long term that will be with you for your lifetime. So yeah, it makes sense to me.
The biggest thing that I was thinking as I was listening to the presentation is just how many things, when especially our industry or people on television or online, when they're giving out data and statistics, we often talk about averages. We often talk about median. And, a lot of people, I think, need a primer on how to understand, those types of conversations. And one specifically is life expectancy. And life expectancy is often given out as an average. And, our people that, that have done well. They've been saving and putting money away. The data shows that people that are, putting money back for retirement and saving tend to, outlive the other folks, the folks that haven't been doing a great job of saving or have lower savings. And, when you start to factor in, people that have assets, people that are generally healthy, don't have any known pre-existing conditions or things that affect mortality, they tend to outlive or are on the higher end of the average. But so we can't afford to look at the average and think like that and plan for the average. We have to plan for you because those are people are above average. And one thing that has made it increasingly difficult is over time, more and more responsibility has been pushed onto the individual, the household, to plan for the future because we don't have nearly the number of defined benefit pension plans as we used to. Social Security at the same time is, not a large replacement ratio for those higher income earners as it is for a lower income worker. That was the design of the system. So what we're seeing is there's a missing piece on that retirement stool because pensions are going away, and it's how good your scorecard is. How well are you able to save and invest until you are ready to retire? And then what can that account balance do for you when it comes to creating income?
I'll push back in this way. I think for some people, the idea of running out of retirement is maybe even a financial reality, right? That there's a good reason for them to be worried because they could be needing to withdraw more money than they can reasonably sustain over their lifetime. The other challenge, though, I see the other side of that coin is that we have people who have an immense fear over running out of money, but have very likely, that have a great chance of actually not ever seeing that occur. Meaning their fear of running out of money is much greater than the financial likelihood that actually happens. And so what we see this sort of hoarding mentality where we're not able to enjoy retirement spending, where we're almost restricting ourselves from having fun when financially the risk that they're feeling is maybe not as close to reality as they think it might be.
Well, no one saves for retirement and thinks, man, I just want to get by. I would think, I know that there's some folks out there that, that they want to just be able to make it. But I think a lot of people, when they think about their retirement years, and this is one of the things we ask when we're having people in and having those conversations is, one, do they even want to retire? And if they do, what does that look like to them? What do they see themselves doing? Where, what type of lifestyle do they see themselves having? And, the answers vary across the board. And so again, that goes back to why it's so important to give yourself time to create that type of plan. Because some of these things, they may take a few years before they can truly manifest. There's things that have to be done. You've got adult children that you've got to finish getting educated, or you've got daughters that you want to help them get married, pay for the wedding. There's all different kinds of stories. You've got your house that you're in now isn't the house you want to retire in and live in retirement. There's tons of stuff that could be there. It's highly individualized. And, it's just important for people to understand that. And that's my main thing is one of the things that we go back, if you want to make it very, very simple, is the more income you have in retirement, the more flexibility you're going to have with whatever it is that you would like to be doing.
Something else about the two, mentally, I think it's easier for us to spend income and cash flow than it is to spend savings. Right.
Oh, for sure.
So it's just a mental bridge that we're accustomed to spending our income, right? Because as we work and earn an income, we spend it. It's part of our normal cash flow. When we get to retirement, we don't have that same level of income coming in any longer, and we start to see, well, we're going to start spending our principal. We don't necessarily want to spend our principal. So having those investment tools that can generate income, in whatever form that is, I just think mentally it's easier to consume and spend and enjoy spending income than savings.
Absolutely. And one of the things that that's happening now, and this is why we want to stress this, is we are now back into this low interest rate environment where, 30 years ago, if you wanted to buy, a fixed income portfolio, you might have been able to get, reasonably 4 or 5% interest, with your bond yields, and, and just kind of have, you could, if you could make it work, live off of the interest. Well, now, just go and take a look at like the CD rates at the banks and the credit unions and see what, these big institutions are paying on savings. It's you're probably going backwards if you factor in any form of inflation. So you have to think about, how do we structure, a retirement plan for that, and then for your younger people, you have to be thinking about, how things may shift in the future for yourselves, and you want to be early to that game because, before you know it, 5 years goes by, 10 years goes by, and then you're staring down the road looking at your own retirement.
Right. Well, it's a good perspective. It's always something to be mindful of as we talk about retirement income planning. Sometimes it's not just the math involved, it's the emotions around it and how we feel about it. So I did come up with something for Investing is Hard.
Okay. This is our Investing is Hard segment.
So, this is our new segment, Investing is Hard. So this week we had to shovel a little dirt onto to the content creator that was formerly known as Quibi.
Oh.
So if you're not familiar, Quibi, which was formed by Jeffrey Katzenberger and Meg Whitman, sourced about $1.75 billion, I think, in investor funds, venture capital, which was designed to create content that was viewable on mobile devices, so a paid subscription service to mobile devices. Made it about 6 months, and then it is no longer.
Horrible idea. Just a horror. I'm gonna poop on that idea. As somebody who, I probably should be embarrassed about how many movies and that I have watched and shows and people. One of the most frustrating things, and in my opinion, one of the things that has really jump started, Netflix and Prime Video and Apple TV and some of these online platforms is not just the technology and the ease of it, but we microwave our entertainment. Like, we no longer have to wait a week to watch like the next episode. And shows that now make us wait, they can be frustrating. Remember back in the day, you wanted to watch like a show, like you had to wait a whole week before you could see the next episode. And so that's kind of really evolved how we consume content. But this Quibi, I think these little episodes were like 10 minutes long. I mean, what is that? Like 10 minutes, dude. If I want to watch a 10-minute video, I'll go on YouTube and watch.
It's somewhat remarkable.
You need to create a platform for that.
Somewhat remarkable how fast it failed. In the fact that for 6 or 7 months, we've largely been trapped in our homes with nothing to do. But if you're not work from home, obviously. But if you're not working, like you're not able to travel, you're not going out, you're not visiting friends and family like you would normally be. You're stuck at home, and they still flamed out. So
they could have created a YouTube channel and done some YouTube shows, and instead they just burned through $1 billion for a terrible idea. This is one of those ideas that I would say they did. I don't know that they brought in anybody that wasn't like a yes person. Like when they all huddled up in the room, and then when they were all patting each other on back, this is going to be the most greatest idea ever. And they didn't bring in like any man on the street types, woman on the street types, and say, "Hey, do you think this would be cool? Should we spend $1 billion doing this?" So hey, glad somebody out there has $1 billion to burn on a terrible idea. It won't be the last time either.
Definitely not. All right, there's Investing is Hard for us for today.
All right, so as always, just to recap the show really quick, like James Clear in our Clear Off, get radical about those things, that are important. Get radical about them and be proactive early on. Like Ross said, solve those big problems early. Don't be afraid of them. Don't let time, don't let those problems, collect dust, because they only grow. They don't go away. And, as far as retirement goes, I know a lot of our younger families, you're not thinking about retirement right now. You're thinking about, next month, next year, how we're going to educate our kids, how we're going to, pay off some of these cars and do other things. Those fundamental things matter. But the key thing to remember is, investing is a long run game. The quicker you can get in the race and start making strides, the better you're going to be in the long term. And then for our families that are in or are getting close to retirement, don't forget, retirement, it requires outcomes. Like, there's going to be a standard of living that you want to have for yourself. What type of income do you need to make that happen? How does that work? How do all of your accounts work together so that you can create income? As David Blanchett said, guaranteed income is the forgotten household asset. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions for us or any topics you'd love for us to cover on the show, you can email us at themoneyhuddle@vcplanning.com. Find us online. Find us, I'm on Twitter, Michael H. Baker. Ross, are you on Twitter?
Yes, somewhere. You can.
Ross Marinell. Find us online. Let us know what you'd like to let's talk about in the next show. And as always, we'll talk to you next time.